Hi there, I'm Jay and welcome to the Ingenious Movement. And for fear of sounding like a pretentious dickhead, I like reading. Wow, what a novel concept. You're so unique. I know, it's not a unique thing, but it's something I feel has shaped me as a person, I guess? Okay, now that sounds really pretentious. My mum really likes reading. In fact, my mum is in fact an author. She's so far only self-published, but she is sending stuff off to agents and they're reading it and it's a whole lot of mess. But my mum is an author, so she's like 90% of the fault for me really liking reading. And I figured I would subject you to my love of reading by talking about some of the books that mean a lot to me and giving you some recommendations for books that I really like. I'm sorry. Yes, I did feel the need to do this. Number one for books that mean a lot to me is this book. It's called The Dragons Have Killed, as you can see, by Beth Webb. It's basically for young children, talking about dragons and how they're all different and stories about them. They're all children. And it's just something that my dad read to me as a kid. We would sit and we would read, and he read me these. And that's why this means a lot to me. It's got some memories for me. Ah, fucking cars. I'm trying to do a thing here. Can you, like, please not? Book 2. Very similar story. It's called The Brothers Lionheart. This one is about two brothers who die. It's probably not it probably is a good book. It's probably just not aged very well. I probably just think of this fondly because of the memories. It's dark, but it's very nice. I'll see if I can find some of the really cool illustrations that they have. Actually, there's a really cool one near the end. That's the cave. Oh, here we go. This is the one I was after. Look at that. Let me just look at this. It's written by Astrid Lindgren. I feel like I know that name. She's probably done something else that I know, but Astrid Lindgren. Now, this book isn't mine. This book's my mum's. And there is a little bit of, I feel obligated for this book to mean a lot to me because it means a lot to my mum. But she read it to me and my sister when we were younger, so it does mean a lot to me. It's not something, I probably will reread it at some point, but it's not something I'm going to go out and buy because I like the story, but I'm not going to go back and read it a lot. But I will, you know, I'll borrow it off my mum at some point and I'll read it. Now, I don't actually have the next, series of books I'm going to talk about. I have a sort of prequel-sequel thing called, well, the original was Beast Quest, which apparently Adam Blade is actually a collection of authors. I don't know, but I have the Chronicles of Avantia still. I'm going to get rid of these because I'm never going to fucking finish reading them. But basically, Beast Quest got me into reading as a kid because I didn't read a lot. I mean, I read, but I wasn't one for reading a lot. I read bits here and there, and I kind of drifted away from it again, but this was the thing that really got me going and got me reading by myself whatever the fuck I wanted. It doesn't age well, and they're very repetitive and formulaic, but for getting kids into reading, the Beast Quest series was very good. The next book is Skullduggery Pleasant by Derek Landy. I believe this is my sister's book. I don't own this. I believe my sister got this when she went into secondary school because basically, Scholastic Books, I believe it was, they ran a program, I believe it was Scholastic anyway, where at my old school, when we went into secondary school, we would get a free book. I got Mortlock by John Mayhew, which, it was alright at the time. I'm probably going to go back and reread it and find I enjoy it a lot more. But if I remember correctly, my sister got Skullduggery Pleasant, and there's at least like 7 or 8 books. And after The Dying of the Light and Last Stand for Dead Men and all that sort of stuff, he said, okay, this is the last book, and he now brought out Skullduggery Pleasant Resurrection, which was good. Very good for inclusivity, that's what I will say. Like, you know, J.K. Rowling goes back and it's like, oh, Dumbledore was gay, this character was that. And it's like, oh, fucking give up. You didn't write it in the first place. Stop trying to backpedal. Whereas what Derek Landy did is he said, well, yeah, no, I haven't written a very inclusive story, so there's a gender fluid character. There's just straight gay characters, just whatever, just a gay person. And it's like, oh, well, your husband, sir. And it's just that sort of thing. You have the villain and his husband. And no, it's his husband, whatever. And you have gender fluid character, like 2 chapters in, potentially even the first chapter, and it's just a case of the main character, or well, one of the main characters who's not the main characters from these books, is sort of saying, well, it's very odd because at this stage in the week, you know, he's normally a she, because at this stage in the week, I believe he's still a he, and at this stage in the week he's normally a she, and it's just, it's so good for inclusivity. But these books really did mean a lot to me because it was year 5, or so 5th grade for all of you. I believe 6th grade, or was it 6th grade? I don't remember. But year 5, so I was 10. It was the end of year 5, and my teacher had put on a party for the class. I know, it's stupid, but basically she put on a party for the class. I never liked party. It was music and dancing and snacks and whatever. I didn't give a shit. So I said to my teacher, can I go out and sit on the stairs and read my book? I would just like to give you some context. This is the same year that I read Robinson Crusoe of my own accord. We had Robinson Crusoe, I picked it up and I said, yeah, I'll read that, and I read it. So I had the second of the Skullduggery Pleasant books, Playing with Fire, and I said, well, can I go read it? Because it was at this stage that I had moved on to bring my own books, because we have reading levels, and we had level 15 was the highest that the school was able to do. And if you were able to read 2 or 3 books at each reading level, well, the standard was 2 or 3 books at each reading level, they'd bump you up to the next one. Now, I went from like level 12 to level 15 in one day. Because I'd been reading for like all of my life at this stage, so they had me at level 12 because that was the standard and it was shit. And so I read a level 13 book and I started it and I was having no problem with it, so my teacher was then, okay, go and get my level 14 book. So I then went and got a level 14 book, started reading it, and you know, I just started reading it and she's like, oh, this isn't good enough for you either. And she'd get me a level 15 book. Now this one was more at my level, but it was shit. So she said, basically what she did is she said, well, take it home, read it, and when you finished it, we can move you, if you had no problems with it, we'll move you up to level 16. And level 16 was bring your own books in. You're not restricted to our library. It's whatever the hell you want to read, you can read it. So that's what I did. Well, I didn't finish that level 15 book because it was terrible. So me and my mum just said we finished it, and I started bringing my own books in. And Skullduggery Pleasant Playing with Fire was one of them. So I sat on the stairs and read. Now this book is different. This isn't one I've read. I started reading it and I didn't get very far into it. I just went and read, I believe it was the Skullduggery Pleasant series. I carried on reading that. This one means a lot to me for a different reason, not any emotional, sentimental attachment. I guess there is an emotional attachment because I think it's really cool. I mean, look at it. It's called The Demon Collector. I don't know how good it is. This is by the same guy who did Mortlock. This could be a really shit book for all I know. But it is, if you can see, it's an uncorrected proof. Now, if you don't understand how books are published, then that'll mean very little to you. But an uncorrected proof is basically the final. I have a definition written down here. It is a printed copy to be reviewed for any problems that it may have, and it's released before publishing only for either promotional purposes or final edits. Basically, I shouldn't have this book. This should never have been released to the public. You know where I got this? The second-hand bookshop at Winchester Cathedral. I picked it up, I got into the car and said, wait, what's an uncorrected proof? So this book is potentially different to pretty much every other copy of this book that's in the public. This book is special, but because I shouldn't have it. That's why this book is special to me. Just like I have a copy of, I think it's the sequel to Noughts and Crosses, or it might actually just be Noughts and Crosses by Marilee Blackman. Can't speak. And it's a signed copy. Like, the book's alright. I have to read the second one. It's probably, again, alright. But it's a signed copy, so I'm going to keep that, even if I never read it again. Just like this. Even if I never read The Demon Collector, I'm keeping this book because it might be worth something. Okay. Now this book, I would say, looking at it, it's fairly self-explanatory. basically it's a book about a trans woman as she's basically being a kid. And I haven't read this particular version of this book because the one I got at the library. But being a trans woman myself, I can relate very well to it. It's sort of thing that it means a lot to me because I can recognise some of my own struggles in it. And obviously every trans person is different. We can't all relate to each other's struggles. But there are certain elements of their struggles that I can relate to, and it basically means that the book means a lot to me. And I think I came out to my family. Well, my dad officially I came out to 2 years ago. My mum was a year or so before that. And I think reading stuff like this, because I read this, I got that out of the library like twice. I think little things like that really sort of gave them clues. My dad, when I came out, what he said was, because I came out as bisexual ages and ages ago, I don't really label my sexuality because I don't fully understand how I am attracted to people anymore. But basically I came out to him and he said that, well, I said that to him and since then it's been pretty much obvious what I am. I don't know if he fully understands the magnitude of what I'm feeling, but, you know, it's one of the things that really meant a lot to me. But it's stuff like this, being able to relate to, even if it's a fictional character, it really helps. So that's why that book's special to me. Now this book, I haven't read, I've listened to the audiobook with my friend Tom. You know Tom, both the college vlogs, the D&D podcast, the Evangelion podcast. So yeah, you know Tom. Tom's been around the block here a little bit, but we listened to the audiobook of Ready Player One whilst driving to and from college. So I guess it's cliche to say that that book has a lot of memories for me, but at the same time, that book has a lot of memories for me. It's a book that I think he's seen the film, but the book itself is good. There are definitely problems with it, but because of the emotional attachment I have to it, it means a lot to me. Okay, I have 4 minutes left to get through all of my recommendations. We'll do our best. First recommendation is Skullduggery Pleasant. That series is great. It's a hilarious, almost effortless. It is. It's an effortlessly hilarious, dark fantasy detective book. It's a comedy. It's magic. It's detective work. It's got such a witty protagonist, and well, I guess Skullduggery is a protagonist because you tend to have two. You have Stephanie or Valkyrie, and you have Skullduggery, or who knows what his original name was. It's probably mentioned at some point, but I don't know it. But Skullduggery is so effortlessly witty, and you get to basically grow up with Valkyrie as, you know, as she goes through her adventures, and she's a very relatable character because it's sort of, I don't know, she's very much like Peter Parker in the sense that any sort of pain or discomfort she feels, she masks with comedy and humour. That both of them do it, and it makes them hilarious and very relatable characters. So I very much advise Skullduggery Pleasant. Although towards Last Stand of Dead Men, the series does get a bit stale. I'd say Resurrection was a good hit back up for the series, but I'm still questioning whether or not he should have done it. Now I like the integration of the diversity that he's managed to get into Resurrection, but I still question whether or not Resurrection was a relevant book for him to write and necessary. But even still, there's plenty of reading material out there for the Skullduggery series, so my advice is read it. Unpopular opinion, Percy Jackson is far superior to Harry Potter, and Harry Potter sucks balls. Okay, now that's going too far. Harry Potter doesn't suck balls, but Percy Jackson is a far superior series. It's got Annabeth, who is basically Hermione. It's got Grover, who is Ron. And it's got Percy, who is Harry. Except I like all of the characters. Annabeth is Hermione, but without being a stuck-up bitch. Ron is basically Grover, except without the annoying know-it-all I'm better than you routine, which then Harry picks up, and Percy doesn't do that. And again, they're hilarious and relatable, and again, you get to grow up with the characters, but that's the thing, because Harry Potter, I loved it growing up. I read the first book. I fucking hate almost all the characters, because it's a thing, you grow up with the books, and so you do with Percy Jackson, except you can go back and reread it and not hate the characters. So Percy Jackson is far better. All other Percy Jackson related stuff is amazing as well. Magnus Chase is great. Trials of Apollo is amazing. Kane Chronicles, oh, they are my favourites. Seraphina by Rachel Hartman. It's an interesting take on dragon, like, lore and mythos. It's a really difficult one to explain. There's actually a second one which I need to buy and read, but it's like a murder investigation and there's slice of life stuff. It's very cool. There's not a lot to say about it, but it is a very good book and I very much advise it. Now this series of books, I think I don't know if it's still going. I think there's at least one book that I haven't got, potentially more, but basically it's about this school for villainy, and that's all I'm going to really say. Except it's got a great range of characters, and there's no real moral dilemma of should we be good guys, should we be bad guys. It's just, we're bad guys, whatever. We have our own personal moral code, we'll follow that. And it's a very interesting sort of idea. It's very much like Artemis Fowl, and in fact it even says at the top, Owen Colfer did a quote for it, sort of promotional thing. Artemis Fowl would fit in perfectly at Hive, basically meaning if you like Artemis Fowl, you'll love Hive. Now, if you don't know about Artemis Fowl, then, well, I have news for you, because Artemis Fowl series is great. Because whereas I said in like Lightning Thief or Percy Jackson series and even Skulduggery Pleasant, they're very relatable characters. In these two, the complete opposite is true. The characters aren't even remotely relatable because, well, in Artemis Fowl, he is a genius. Hive, I'll let you see. They're both criminal. They're all criminals. It creates a very interesting dynamic. And the fantasy element in Artemis Fowl is a very interesting touch that Hive doesn't have. But it's very interesting, the different approaches that they have, and the fantasy element does definitely richen the story because you've got all these very diverse and there's a diverse range of different personalities, and it makes for a very interesting read. Now, the next one is Conspiracy of Alchemists. This is it's a steampunk book, so if you don't like steampunk, look away now. I don't have a lot to say about this one, except it's a very cool, steampunk story, and it's got a really cool female protagonist. There's not a lot to say about it. It's a very good book, and I recommend it. And finally, we have the Department 19 series, which is vampires. It's a very interesting take on the Dracula lore and mythos. It's sort of thinking what happens to Dracula and vampires in the modern day, and it's not Twilight shit. It's vampire hunters, but later on in the series, you get the common sense of people saying, well, not all vampires are evil, surely, and that raises a very interesting dynamic in the series. Some very likeable characters, very interesting design choices for some of it. Allows for a very good visualization. Like, I'm normally not very good at visualizing new places, because I always tend to think in terms of when I read about the protagonist's house, I always think of this place, which might change next year. Maybe I'll start thinking of my house. But this is what I think of whenever a protagonist talks about the front room, which Department 19 didn't have that problem, because the same with the Conspiracy of Alchemists, because you can't. It's a completely different environment, so they allowed for some very good visualizations. And now a honorary mention for both of these categories is actually Mortal Engines, which they're doing a film of. Peter Jackson is directing a Mortal Engines film, and in theory a Predator's Gold Infernal Devices and Darkling Plane film as well. So that's going to be very interesting to see how the films turn out. But the books are very good. They were my introduction to steampunk, actually, to be honest. Which is why I have Conspiracy of Alchemists. And if you think I'm talking really fast, it's because I have like less than 5 minutes left of space. I have like a minute left. But yeah, Mortal Engines. It's a great series, very well written, some interesting characters, interesting sort of dystopian steampunk world. Nothing like what we're used to, where it's this gleaming steampunk thing, you know, full of tar, but you know, it's a functioning society. Mortal Engines is very different. But anyway, now I've dragged you into my love of literature and made you suffer through all of that. Thank you guys ever so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.